folks. Okay, we are at it again, following up with part 2 of speed density, and today with added value, the talking head feature. Yes, the production value continues to increase here at Trojan Tuning. So, picking up from where we left last time, this is part 2 of the speed density video. We are going to look today to continue what we were doing last time. Just as a review, we were looking at these graphs that comprise the speed density overall contiguous shape, but we know that that is too hard to work with because we're not fourth dimensional mathematical geniuses. So we're working with our speed density calculator. Okay, and last time we had looked at, oops, it's helpful if I actually use the right scene. There we go. Last time we were looking at our log. We saw that our trims down low were coming in lean. We're way outside what I would normally like to do. I say way outside. It's actually not that bad. But it's more than 5, right? 5's my competency standard, 2 is God mode, right? And we were also looking at the spread across the aggregate trims here, right? So today, what we want to do is tune, right? We want to fix stuff, okay? So how do we do that? So going back to theory, you remember we were looking at this schedule here. So again, I'm in the tune. I'm in the engine tab, I'm in airflow here, and I'm going to go to the variable camshaft. And now I can see my variable camshaft schedules. And over here with mapped points, we see that I have these various schedules. Now let's go through these real quick. Emission reduction is the one that controls idle. So within here, if I open this up, we can see for idle, I have these 5 map points available to me. That's the indices, right? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This one shows, though, what actual mapped point I would use. So map point 10, 18, 17, 20, and 20, okay? That is not that mysterious. That is for the first 30 seconds we're idling. We don't use it a lot. That is not something we're going to tune against, okay? What we want to tune against are things like the fuel economy table, the optimal stability table, and I can start stacking these a little bit. I want to look at manual launch. Really, we're not going to be using manual launch. That's no big deal. Let's see. And then the valve openings we're not going to mess with right now. Just for fun, these will come up later, though, in optimal power. So don't forget those. Okay, that's going to be fun stuff later. But the way this works, and getting down to these distance tables as well, drivability, you can see here the load against speed. We're mapping, this is the distance, right? So this is distance to optimal power. We don't need to go into this too much, right? What this is saying is that for these different engine states, what you want to be, the ECU, you want to tend to be this far away from optimal power. And just for fun, the optimal power tables are up here, okay? And that's fun, interesting stuff we will get to later. I'm not going to get bogged down in it now. Let's focus on what we need to do today. The point I was trying to make was that drivability actually references the fuel economy table, as well as the best fuel economy also references the fuel economy table. So there's 2 here. Drivability and fuel economy both actually rely on this map point structure. Optimal stability, though, as well, is a core drivability, lots of transient partial throttle states, things we have to think about there. Including, of course, the transient table, which, this is interesting, if it is in a transient state, the model says go to table 0, right? Which is, if you recall, 10 is the intake manifold runner control in the low state, regular everyday driving. 0 is actually the we want to go to power state. Okay. But we're going to be focusing mostly on these two tables here. Okay. And so what this is saying, we'll start with fuel economy. For these different states, this is what we're reaching for. And this is the map point we would invoke. This is where we start to get into snap to point territory. And this is how the HDFX moves around these different modes. It creates these pathways that are constant. And what this table is showing here is just which ones are available. So these tables, 0 through 25, are active. The HDFX can reach for them. It can use them. 0 is not active. So, and this is, it's now, having said that, it's like the English language, right? Now that I've taught you the rule, here are all the things that break it, which are more numerous than those that follow the rule. So map point 26 is in fact out of play. Mapped point OP, optimal power, is out of play here because it's referenced elsewhere in the HDFX. Okay. It's not actually truly deactivated, it's just deactivated here. And then in the snap to line arrangements, if that opens, it's teasing me. 1 sec. Okay, I found it. It was off to the right. Yeah, be aware sometimes you have to use the slider if you move something left to right. Okay, so snap to line shows the different transient possibilities, right? And so this is like a default mode for the HDFX to look at. And so, for example, if I was here in segment 10, I would tend to move from table 13 to 14. Here in segment 7, I would tend to move from table 10 to 11, which, so again, that's sort of like mostly your idle state. And then other areas as well. Okay. We'll talk more about that later. For now, let's focus on the main idea here, which is this. What is it I'm trying to do? What I want to do is look at map point 0, and I want to account for this pocket right here, which I'm pretty sure is mapped point 10. I know that from experience. Idle, low throttle, partial throttle, right? The down low stuff. Driving around, cruising around. That's what we're after here. And we want to correct these numbers here. This is the filtered data. The overall aggregate, we see here, right? That's the pocket we're working with, right? This data is all valid too, but we're not going to work with that today. We're going to deliberately select, we want to work with mapped point 10 in the low state, which will be mapped point 0 in the high state. And so if I come back, right, I want to focus right in this section right here, this down low stuff. Okay, this is the world we're going to inhabit today. But here, and this is map point 0, 10 is the corollary, right? So this pocket right here. So knowing that we want to work with that, we want to say to the computer, here you are in fuel economy, and these are all the different modes you're going through, right? 0 through 7. And what I want to do is set them all to mapped point 10. And here's the magic of the high-low method. I'm going to say mapped point 10. I'm going to select, so I enter 10 here, I'm going to highlight the whole table, and I just say equals, okay? And now, for all modes, no matter what's going on, if it's in a VCT schedule of fuel economy, it's going to point everything to map 10 if the IMRC is low. If the IMRC is high, it's going to drop the first digit and point to table 0. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to adjust anything. It's just how the ECU works, right? And I had to do a lot of testing to figure out that that's the default behavior. But that's how we do that, okay? And that's the magic of the method. Now that's fuel economy. And also we've lit up red, and shame on me, we're working on a file here, core file, that we have not saved yet. So we're going to save our file first, so we don't overwrite things. And we're going to wait for my crunchy little laptop to go ahead and pull up a file dialog. Come on. Let's wait. Good Lord, that took a lot of time. Okay, so we're going to do tuning tutorial again. And this time, instead of math, we're going to do speed density. We're going to do table 10. And this is going to be the baseline iteration, 1.0. Okay. Now we're not assholes. Okay, so with that, that took care of, again, I'll bring up fuel economy. Everything is map point 10. So now we got to think about optimal stability, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Highlight the whole table, come up here, put a value of 10, and hit the equal sign. And now everything's going to go to map point 10. And we just overwrote some great forward logic that we don't want to lose. So again, remind us why we save as, right? That file is still there for you to reference later on. You should have your stock file. You should have previous iterations, right? There should be multiple points where you can retrieve your VCT schedule, which is what we're going to do at the end. Okay, so for now, though, we've said use map point 10, which it will. Okay, and so we're going to save that. Emission reduction, we're not going to worry about. We're going to let it do its thing, and that's it. Okay. And so you may ask yourself, well, now what about optimal power, right? We're going to do optimal power later. What we're doing now, and what you would do if you're beginning your tune, is we're going to start with table 10, and we work our way through table 19. Right, and we do this process I'm about to show you those 10 times, okay? And each of the 10 pockets, we probably have to do 2 or 3 iterations. So did I just hear I have to do 30 speed density tuning sessions? Yes. Yes, you do, right? Is this hard and time? It's not hard. It's actually not that difficult. What I'll show you, is it time consuming? Yes, you're going to be doing logging, right, and putting some miles on the car. But it's going to pay dividends knowing that your tune is locked in. And I am very excited because, okay, it's 2 things. It's winter here. I'm looking out at snow on the ground. So again, my down low is what's a little tricky. So I'm actually going to tune tables 10/0 and 11/1, maybe 12/2, and then I'm going to stop there. And you shouldn't, though, if you're doing your bass tune. You should keep going, right? And then we're going to go to optimal power, and we're going to do those 2. I'm excited because, thanks to my wife, Santa is bringing some Cook's long tube headers with a high output green cat this Christmas. So when those pipes go on, that's going to be the glorious winter project, and we're going to document the whole thing here on the channel. When those pipes go on, I'm going to have to do this whole thing over again. Why? Because we've changed the airflow plumbing of our system in a significant way. Right, air is going to flow very differently. We are going to go outside the 5% wiggle we have that the ECU can account for like it's nothing. It's going to be off by 15-20% because that's a lot more air flowing through now that we've reduced all that back pressure. So I'm going to have to model the whole thing. My airflow model will have to be fully updated to account for my change in airflow plumbing. Right, so and this is the theory. So if you add something like an intake, you're not going to get the full juice out of that intake without the tune. If you add the intake and do the tune, that's where the 10 horsepower comes from. It's not the 10 horsepower the advertiser is telling you, right? It's not magic. It's that you can change the plumbing to then change the tune. And so an intake is very small. We're talking a couple percent in the air model, right? We're getting a little horsepower. Headers, though, installed correctly and tuned correctly, we're talking like 75 horsepower, 80 horsepower, right? With torque, to probably the Ford torque, you're 50 pound-feet, right? If it was a bigger block engine, like an SS engine, you might get equivalent, right? It could be 80 horsepower, 80 pound-feet of torque, right? Coyotes, though, they're loud, they whine, they go up high, right? It's not quite the same down low, but that's what we're talking about here. That's what's at stake. So we want to get this right, okay? And then, my God, when the supercharger comes, right? Which, get ready for that. That might be happening later too. So we will load this onto the engine, and then we're going to check our logs here, right? And so remember last time I was missing a few things, if you remember, and I believe I've since added them. So we've added VCT schedule mode. So I will be able to see during this data pull, you were in fuel economy, right? Or you were in optimal stability. It'll show us right here. And it will also tell us map 10, right, should be 100% of the time. And then occasionally flicker up to 0 here, okay, when it's an IMRC high. So, and we still have that. In fact, let's bring that down just for fun. Doop, 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 doop. Where did my IMRC go? I assure you it's in here. There it is, right there. I'm just blind. That'll be there in voltage. Let's see if I push this to the right. It'll show up here, right? So we'll be able to see. So we'll see the schedule we're in. We'll see the table we're referencing. We'll see the state of the IMRC. We'll have all our other goodies as well. Fueling, right? All that business. Engine RPM, map, things like that. And then this time I also have, just for fun, at any given moment I can see from the variable camshaft schedule we are in, from the one we're in to optimal power, what the distance is. And that is upper tier stuff, right? That's where we start to think about how the HDFX optimizes moving from current state to power. We're not going to worry about that too much, okay? We'll talk about it later. So, okay, I think that's it. We have enough to be dangerous here. We're going to go ahead and load this on the car, and we're going to pull a log, and then I will show you what we do with all that. So, stay tuned. Okay, we're back. We survived the harsh winter. So, I'm going to open the log. I'll bring this up here for you. Okay. So, pretty good run. And let's stop a moment and think about, again, what we're doing here. So if I bring the tune back for a sec, actually. Doop, doop, doop. And we're working with map point 10. Okay. So think about when you were a kid and you went to the fair or Six Flags or whatever. They have that game where there's a bunch of little goldfish in bowls all over a floor, and you get to toss ping pong balls at them or little hoops or whatnot over Coke bottles, right? This is very similar in that the HDFX comes in top down, and based on the VCT schedule, based on the RPM, based on the pressure in the manifold, right, it selects one of those goldfish and it targets it with a ping pong ball and it hits it every time, right? It's very, very accurate. And so from a top-down perspective, as changing conditions occur, it's constantly reaching for the correct calibration, goldfish, if you will, right, and dialing in power. And we're essentially saying, if you're shooting for the goldfish in like Battleship, right, in I-17, right, and you keep hitting I-16 instead, I'm going to doop, 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 a little to the right with a calibration such that you're hitting I-17 every time. That's what we're doing. And the way we do this is with a bottom-up approach, where we're moving through each of these cells very deliberately and checking the trim calibration for that cell. And if we exhaustively map all of these tables and all of these cells, then having done it laboriously, bottom up, anytime the engine reaches for something top down, it'll reach a cell that we've calibrated. And so that's what we're doing here, right? So having shown you those, let's bring the tune back up, or the log rather. So here's the log. Here are the moments, right? And I'm going to pick a random moment here, and let's check a few things. Okay. It's not showing it, but look, VCT schedule, fuel economy. And you will see that for a lot of this, it's either best fuel economy, or optimum stability. You can see there that schedule mode, right? It's not changing a lot. It's going between those, okay? Because look, map point 10, it's staying there for the most part. There are moments where, remember I left launch control activated because it's winter here. I don't want to lose traction. I probably wouldn't anyway, but I didn't mess with that, right? Because I still have plenty of data. I'll go back to that outlier. Okay. You can see map point 18 down low while I'm getting the car going. It comes into play occasionally. There it is. That 99 point. There it is. 82% of the time, right? The other table, though, that's being engaged, 23% is 10. And for the bulk of it, though, it's map 10 that's engaged. And in that way, we're able to isolate map point 10. That's half the battle. The other half of the battle is the way we drive, right? Yeah, I'm moving through the various RPMs. I'm careful in second gear, third gear to let the engine RPM move through, right? I do it sort of gradually, just like math. Various hills, you can be driving along, you can be in third gear at 2500 RPM, and if you go up a hill, the pressure will actually vary across the whole pressure spectrum, even though the RPM is held constant and map point is held constant. That's the whole point of the game. You're right. If we had a dyno, we would replicate conditions on the dyno and just move through the rows. Get it going at 2200. Okay, now adjust, we can move through the whole pressure. Now go to 2400 through the whole pressure, right? And on and so on. Street tuners, we have to replicate it with driving conditions. And again, if you think of those ping pong balls, right? As we're driving, all sorts of these ping pong balls continuously are falling onto that matrix, right? And luckily the software is catching them all. And if we look here at aggregate trims, this is what we caught, right? We spent a lot of time in these situations. And look up here, pretty good. Let me check real quick here. 1 sec. Okay. All I did was lower my cell count a little bit. In fact, let's go with 0. Great. Okay, now you can see what we're really doing here. Okay. So this is the calibration data we collected. Now this is a short log, 16 minutes. Not a lot, right? And that's okay. And that's part of the cool thing about with these map tables all being separated. You can focus in with this map point adjustment and really gather a whole lot of data pretty quickly. Now, having seen that I'm mostly in 99.1 here, right? What I can do, I'm going to go to the real data here. Okay, the low data. And as a refresher, in fact, I may be in the wrong spot. As a refresher, though, we're looking at the voltage of the intake manifold runner control sensor, and we're making sure that the voltage for the low state is less than 2.0. That reminds me, let's look at something. There were some brief moments where I added some power, right? And so here's a nice little hill where I started low, and what did I get up to? 5,600, not bad. And you will see here, let's keep an eye here. That is a low state. And as I add the beans, though, we should see, we're up at 2.85. And now here, for the peak power, right above 3,800, we've gone to 3 volts, 3.33, right? We're higher than 3. So now we know we're in a high state. And we can see here that it's referencing optimum power, actually. And now we're pulling from these optimum power tables, which it's blending. Compelling, no? But look here. There's a moment towards the tail end at 5200 where I've engaged in a very heavy way map point 0, even though I'm in the fuel economy mode, right? Because my intake manner runner control is higher. Right, and that's now I've got a couple moments where I'm at north of 90, right? This is that high-low principle in action. It switches from 10 down low to when IMRC is up high, it switches to 0, right? And that's how we're able to capture data in two tables at the same time, which is why for the core bulk of the work, we only have to worry about 10 map points as opposed to 20. That would suck. Okay, so just to highlight that these are moments in the situation where we're able to capture both. Now, I say that because let's go to the low, and let's check again here. So, low, IMRC under 2 volts, and over here, map point 10 weighting, which is what I would expect. Okay, that's what we want to see. We want 10 cell hits. I'm going to drop that to 5 just to see what we get. And then otherwise we hold everything else constant here. And then up high, we're above 3 volts. We're looking at map point 0. And let's shave this to something like 2. And let's see what we get. So down low, interesting. Looks like we're rich here. This is all pretty tight. And there's 7.69, which is curious. And I'm going to check the counts now. So that's 113 ping pong balls I dropped through this data point, right? 206, right? 180. This I only hit with one ping pong ball, right? I have one piece of data. And so going back here, this 7.69 at 29.7, 3600. Ooh. 17 ping pong balls. Which I do that because, okay, you know, if that was 1 or 2, I might not want to tune with that, but 17, that could be some data we want to think about. In the high state, this is what I captured. And look, we've got more evidence of some lean. Now, in the high state, here's the thing. Down low, your counts are going to be pretty good because we spend the majority of our time there, right? Up high, the counts are lower by necessity, right? Because there's just less time you're spending with power ramping up, just the nature of the beast, right? So we're a little more cautious. We're going to treat these a little differently. And here's what I mean by that. Let's go to low here. Let's take the averages again. I like what I'm seeing. It's pretty good data. I'm going to grab this data and I'm going to copy. I think we're just going to copy it. And then if that is my low data, here I am in map point 10. I'm going to select my table. And first of all, before I do anything, we're going to start tuning. So we're going to save this as iteration 1.1. Okay, now I'm going to come to my speed density calculator. I'm going to go to mapped point 10. I'll blow that up a little bit. Talk about that in a minute. I am then going to take a big bite at the apple here. I'm going to do the whole percentage. And I do that because I've got pretty solid numbers with pretty high data count. In the next one, I'm only, with the high state, I only dare do it by half, right? Because that's less data. But here, I'm going to take a big bite at the apple, multiply by percent, and you'll see these are the spots I've touched, okay? And you can even see over here on my table, I've got this interesting little sort of lumpy patch here, right? And this is where I've made some adjustments. Now, when you're adding your numbers here, you may find yourself, as a beginner, if you are doing this, occasionally if something goes wrong, you may see something absurd like that. And that's a big problem because the computer is working with those three different components of a speed density equation, remember? And it's using all three of those to blend this into a smooth shape. It only understands smooth shapes. It does not like spikes. What it really doesn't like is spikes that go in different directions. If we were to tell the modeler, let's use this, it would absolutely shit the bed. And it would look really weird. In fact, let's do it. Bang. Oh, I'm wrong. Okay. So, in this case, the software saved us. So let's talk about what just happened. What happens, and I hit this button, calculate coefficients. When you make the adjustment, you're moving the plane a little bit, and then you hit calculate coefficients, you're saying, okay, computer, I've made the percentage changes. Take it from here and reintegrate this across those three different areas in the speed density tables to form a contiguous smooth surface. And the computer looks at what you entered and what was already there and says, if the general model is true and what he just put in is true, then the overall shape would look like this, right? And it adjusts a little bit. Sometimes it comes out like absolute horseshit, where there's spikes going all over, there's things moving different directions, right? That is what you want to avoid. If that does happen, you have to back your data out. You have to do a little smoothing. If this was the GM world, this would be the world of the VVE editor, and if you've worked with that painful daemon, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of smoothing work you have to do. For this one, this calculator is actually pretty darn good, and rarely do we get into a situation. Now, the only problem is I put garbage data in there. I don't want to tune with that, right? So we're going to back this out. We're going to close. It's going to bark at us. Don't you want to save that? No. No, I don't. Okay, and now I'm going to open my file back up. And I'm going to go back to my calculator, and this should be the original data. Should be. How do I know? I can compare. Looking at the original table, and the calculator here won't help you, I don't think, because you can't move through the states, right? But if I go to speed density, remember here's all my tables, I can look at the slope, for example, about 0.0, and I can say, what is it currently? What is there? Are there any changes? No? Okay, so I know that it's pre-adjustment. These are the kinds of things that prevent you from making serious, vexing mistakes. Okay, so if I go back to speed density, here's the table. I come back to my data. Again, this is the low table. I'm going to copy it, put that back. I'm going to make sure I'm touching map point 10, not map point 0. I've done that. And then I'm going to do special, do the whole percentage, verify that's what it looks like. Yes, this is what I want. That is minimally strange and lumpy, so I shouldn't have any problems when I roll the dice and hit calculate, and presto, right? And here I'm still smooth and happy, good lookups, and look at all the cells that it changed and adjusted, right? And that's it. We just tuned the car, right? Because that one we will close. I will come back up to my data, and I will move from low to high. I'm pretty excited about this. I like it. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to come back here to the calculator. And just like I adjusted the low state, now I am going to confidently stay here at map point 0, the high state. Here's the table. And remember I said this is, I think, okay data, but I'm not going to overcommit. I'm going to go by half. And by going by half, it prevents me from just ping-ponging around the place where I really want to be, right? I want to be in the middle. With a big adjustment, if I was way over here, I do percentage because it moves me close to the middle, and then I can zero in. If I'm already there, though, like if I'm here and I want to be here, doing it by halves keeps me from just going back and forth. It lets me circle in towards the center, right? So we multiply by half. Not a big deal. Occasionally you run into this situation. So what cell is that? Here he is, right? And I believe, let's see, I think I'm able to zoom. There we go. If you hold down both mouse buttons, you can zoom. See, there's a little cell here. It didn't come along for the ride. I just didn't happen to get data in it. And it's dipping there. Now, you could highlight these and do a vertical interpolation and see how it smoothed that just now. Okay? If this was VVE, we would do a lot of that. In our case, let's back that out. We're going to trust that the editor is going to do a lot of that for us when we hit the magic button. Let's do so. Ping. Okay? And it just created a continuous shape that makes sense across all these different boxes. I have found in the Ford world, this is better, right? If you're overly smoothing it, you can kind of end up just going in circles, right? This gets us pretty darn tight. And I'm talking 1% is on the table if you really follow through. 2% is attainable with minimal work, 5% all day long, probably with just like even one iteration, right? But so now this table is tuned. So we close that. We save it. That's it, folks. That's all she wrote. That's all you need to do. It's not that bad. We then take this, put it on the car, do another log, and we should see we're coming in close. And so now the question I have, if you saw the previous log, you saw that down low we were pretty lean in a significant spot. Why didn't I see that data in map point 10? Maybe, leading theory, because it's in map point 11, which we won't know until we log and isolate map point 11. For now, though, we saw there was that lean hissy pocket from like 3600 to 4500. That is our bread and butter for partial throttle. Often we are in that state. So we're going to map those changes out onto the tables, and then we're going to log again, see where we're at, and we should be tighter. So let's see if we can put our money where our mouth is. Be right back with those results. All right, we're back. And we have results. Let's take a look. So anytime I come back, I check basic things. Was I in the right spot, right mode, etc. I look at the long terms, and you'll see something curious has happened here. So one thing with that map is that we had pockets that were pretty good, and then we had other pockets that were spiky, for lack of a better word. There was, I don't know, you were seeing a lot of like 1s and 2s, and then you'd see a 7 or an 8, stuff like that. So this is interesting because it is less extreme. It's more uniform. The only problem is it's now uniformly too low, right? And actually, here's the thing. I could probably live with this, right? If my Latiftas across the board or you know, this level of correction, I could probably live with it. Short terms I don't look at as much because they're chaotic. And again, I will emphasize, why haven't you turned the yellow Latiftas off? Because this is the way the car operates on the street. You know, I'm tuning towards the configuration that is what I'm using most for a daily driver. And remember, the ECUs are very, very, very fast, right? So these Latiftas are pretty good at telling you what the big picture is. If this was going to the drag strip,
we'll turn that off. This would be a whole, right? And we'd also be tuning to watt, right? And fuck speed density down low, right? But that's not what we're doing, right? We're not the 2%. That's their primary goal here, right? I'm just a guy driving a car, and I want it to go vroom vroom, right? So Latiftas are great. Then getting down to our tables here, we get to start playing an interesting game, and I'm going to go back to my graphs here. One thing I was worried about was if I do a lot of engine braking. I am an old school manual driver. I think rev matching is the greatest thing ever because I can rev match like I'm a heel toe mastermind. And so when I start coming down, I'm shifting down every time. I also have my motorcycle license, and you hardly ever use your handbrake if you're riding a bike, right? It's all vroom, 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 right? Engine braking on the way down. I do the same with the car, and I was worried. Hey, when when DCFO is active and I'm decelling and engine braking, am I getting garbage data? I did filter on accelerator pedal position, a few other things, and luckily for whatever reason, the data we're getting doesn't seem to capture dead data, right, where the accelerator is not active. Thank God, or that would be a filter nightmare. What I did do though is add in our throttle angle, right? And we're saying throttle angle for the second ahead of the data point should be less than 5. Second behind it should be less than 5. So we shouldn't have pedal going everywhere, right? It should be stable state pedal stuff, right? And that did filter out some stuff. And what it buys us is the ability to get a little more choosy with our cell hits. Normally, I would say, you only want to be on 10 cell hits. But remember, the ECU is pretty quick, and we want to be able to tune. You can start seeing patterns here, and I'll even show you as I start moving through my cell hit requirements. I could start opening up. Oops, here we go, 6. I can go to 5. I can go to 4. Right, and that looks like safe, stable, trending data. I see that 8.06 there in the 700 column. If I go down to 3, even more of a picture. But if I go to 1, now we've got some crap on the borders, right? And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I think I'm going to take, do I want 3 or do I want 4? I think I'm going to take 3. Because that looks reasonable and sane to me, and I know I've filtered out some crapola, right? I could be more precise, but that looks pretty good to me, this trending, right? So, and it also looks fairly uniform. I like that. So I think we are circling in. The other thing is if you look at the log here, that's 44 minutes down low. Now, 15 of that was me navigating a parking lot while I was dropping my wife off somewhere. So it's not, a real, it could be richer, right? It's really a half-hour log. But it is a good, proper half hour of me going on country roads, up and down hills, second, third, fourth, fifth gear. I'm stabbing it occasionally, which that shows you, I know how to turn my IMRC on, right? There's like a middle position where you're not down low, but you're not up in watt and optimal power. That's the other thing. You can't just floor it. And it's actually kind of fun when you're doing the speed density tuning, because if you say you activate map point like 14, 15 is the dominant map, and you do floor it, there's nothing there. And that's because then we can start coming to, when we do optimal power, we begin worrying about the valve openings, right? Because the valves are what control the airflow for power, right? And so if you're stuck in map point 15 and then 5 conversely with the IMRC open and you hit the floor, right? You can see here on 21 through 25, they want to be open way early, right? But if I'm stuck here or 0 or -10, there's nothing there, right? So you'll be out driving and you'll hit the pedal down and the car doesn't do jack shit. It's like, oh, it's weird. That's the power we have, though, if we use the VCT scheduling and determine the map point we want to use. So back here. So we got some reasonably good high data, right? And my counts are, my best was 24. Not great, but we have it, right? And we'll load this, and here's where I will give you, right, a word of caution. I'm very OCD. I love to, really dial things in. It's just how I am. When you're going north of 3,000 in partial throttle, you're not going to be referencing table 10. You're just not. It's going to be either going to the tip-in power tables, which are like 13, 14, and beyond, right? 17, 18, and 19 are very exciting for IMRC low tables. Once you're higher than that, though, trims are going to be governing a lot of things. The watt tuning is what really matters. It's other areas of the tune that are going to take over. The point being, we will load this data and calibrate. I'm not going to obsess over it, right? What I'm really interested in is this down low, because this is my bread and butter. And if you look at the counts, right, let's see, what's my biggest one? This guy right here, that's currently lean by 8 points. I'm in that state a lot. And then this guy right here, low pressure 2100. I'm there a lot, right? And I'm lean there, right? So this is where I want to really tune. The other thing, it's like, well, why do you care so much about when you're down low? Because I could be anywhere in here. In fact, I could be anywhere in here when I see my nemesis, a Camaro, drive by, and I suddenly want to jump to power. And when I ram that pedal down, it's going to start here, it's going to reference the distance table, and then move towards optimum power and begin making predictions. The power of the predictive modeler, the speed density predictive modeler, is grounded in how accurate I am. The more accurate I am, the less time it has to hunt with trims, the more it just hits the optimum spot immediately, and whew, quick, right? And then the trims come behind it and be like, yep, this is right, we're within 1, 2, 3%. That's where you want to be. You don't want to have the computer hunting to find the right spot. You just want to drop in right there. So that's why these matter, because they're the point of departure to greater things. We want to, we'd rather leave from JFK than LaGuardia. It's a downstate joke. Okay, so coming back to, what was it doing? Oh, so, yep, I'm going to keep these numbers. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to come back upstairs here. I've already saved this as 1.2. So now, I'll grab my calculator. Again, first thing you do, make sure you're on the right map point. And make sure that people can see what you're doing. There we go. Map point 10, right spot. I like looking at the graph because it helps me stay intuitive. All looks good. And now this time, we're not going to bite so deep, right? We have a uniform sort of adjustment. A lot of my numbers are at 5 or less. Even where I have numbers that are like 8% that are kind of outliers, fringe, I only have 1 or 2 bytes of data. All the more reason, now that we've taken the rough cut, right? The first pass was the rough cut. Quick, rough, right? Now we want to start making smooth, intelligent cuts. And we don't want to overshoot ourselves. So now we multiply by half. Ding. And we see that we have some lumpy changes, but nothing crazy that makes our Pringle turn into a Frito, right? That's what we don't want. And at this point, there we go. Now we've recalculated, and this should be closer. And we will have the opportunity now, having come in and seen this was, lots of 4s, 5s, 6, 4, 5, 6s. When I do this again, which is exactly what I'm going to do, we should see across the board these come down to 1s, 2s, and 3s. And if that's the case, we've tuned the table. Okay. Likewise, though, so let's see, that's you. Now we'll go to map point 0. We'll come back down here. We'll go to our high data. Let me just get that a little bit. This is where art and science play around and meet. I think 1 is a little too aggressive. 4 really strips it out. 3's a little sparse. 2, no big deal, because again, I'm going to circle in. We'll keep it at 2. I wish I had more data. I could spend more time, but you, if you're doing this the first time, do your homework and get a little obsessive. For me, I'll keep that. Copy. I'm going to come up. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right table. I do not want to adjust this on table 10. That would suck. I'm going to come in and I'm going to circle in again. Multiply by half. I see the lumps of reason and calibration. I'm going to calculate. Bang. And that is that. That is another iteration of the tune. Okay, so we're going to go load this, and we'll see how we did. See you in a minute. All right, moment of truth. We just got back from the run. Still can't believe we're getting snow here around Albany, New York. This will be our final adjustment, I'm hoping. This is what we did last time. Transition here. You're seeing it for the first time I am. We managed to do 24 minutes, hills, first, second, third, a little bit of stabby. We'll see. It looks good though. Lots of map point 10, which is what we want. Okay, LTs. Oh my God. Is that not a thing of wonder and beauty? Look at that. That is, folks, that's the shit you want to see. That's where it's like, I know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? Like, because the math stuff had a bunch of us going in circles, right? And the speed density, though, once we figured out speed density was the air model that the HDFX uses, man, dialing that shit in just feels right. So right. Checking the STs. This is what I like to see. Not a lot of volatility. I don't really care about stuff that's 1200 and under. All in here, those are very minute adjustments, right? So that's telling me the computer's not hunting all over, right? If you were seeing 7, 8, 9, anything over 10 in here, I'd be concerned. LTs, though, pretty as a picture. Coming down to the data. Oh, shit, son. Clean as a whistle. Clean as a whistle. And you can see now, having circled in with the percent halves, now in certain spots I'm coming in rich. In other spots I'm coming in a little bit lean. That is good stuff. I don't even know if I need to apply this. I might. Checking high. That's what you want to see. This 3600. Two ping pong balls dropped in that bucket. I'm not worried about it. I'm just not worried about it. Again, optimum power is going to take care of that anyway. The 4.39, 4 of them. Little shitty, but again, under 5 for the most part. Right, but the rest of the stuff, clean. So I tell you what, for the sake of the exercise, let's come to the low data. We're going to do the same thing I did before. We're going to just massage just a little bit. If I put you at 5, a lot of my stuff goes away. If I put you at 4, I get a lot of it back. If I put you at 3, I get some crap back, some noise. So we're going to stick with 4 for the low. Let's go ahead, grab it. We will come up top. We're on the right table. I can't tell you again. Make that your first thing you always check. Overwriting the wrong table sucks. But I'm going to go ahead. Again, we're in the land of circling in. That is a very minute adjustment. Table updated. No sweat. Now let's go to table 0. Go back down to our results. The highs, let's play with those a little bit. If I put 5, I bet you all go away. A lot of you go away. Okay. So you see that 5.6? See how 3 hits makes that go away? 4 hits, 5 hits. 5 hits, that 4.39 goes away. Let's do 3. We'll keep 3. There are those out there who are going to be like, that's not how you tune. It's not how you do that. There is a competing school of thought, right, that this is not quite enough data, but I stand by and I would do this differently on different cars, right? This is very different from, like back in the day tuning Mazda speed, and the Audis. The thing is, with this ECU, with how fast it is and how accurate the trims are, I'm willing to take it, right? And we will know because, again, remember I mentioned that the original log is kaleidoscopic. It shows the HDFX grabbing from a number of VCT schedules, hitting a number of map points, and it was only down low that we had work to do. So here, having zeroed in, right, and living in the world of map point 10, where I think the problem was, we've now calibrated across the board. When we inject this back in the model, you will see the overall model coming in tighter, right? We'll probably have to do 11 as well, and I'll probably save that for the next video and show you the results of that as I go into the optimal power tuning. But for now, we're going to keep this. We're going to come back upstairs. We're in table 0 for the high data. We'll grab that. Halvesies again. That's what it touched. Update the model across the board. Thank God HP Tuners gives us this thing. That is a wrap. So that's 1.3. So now for future speed density work, I will build on this file. In fact, I'll show you what that looks like. We would save this as, having done 1.3, we will now make this the basis for going into table 11, 1.0, right? Hello, thank you. Yes, it's the GM representative. So we would then cycle through all of those, right? And after you finish 11/1, you would go to 12/2, 13/3, and you keep layering on. And then all of that we bring into optimal power. And when that's done, guess what? That's your base calibration, right? And then that we bring into the next world will be the land of power enrichment. Because we've earned the right to power enrich because our airflow model is within 2% across the board. So we can fight dirty, right, by commanding some leaner AFRs than usual at watt, which is where you start to see detonation. But shh, we don't want to have that. So that is that for now. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, what if we do want more data? So coming back down here. And I'll move my assistant here. Piss off. There you go. What if I want more data? What if up high, I don't like my counts? Those are piddly little counts. They're rather anemic. I want a model with good stuff. How can I increase my data? Well, you need more data. So how do I get more data in the same period of time? You have to increase your sampling rate, my son. If we go to short term and I right click, I see I have a polling interval. Okay, if you've got a nice quick computer, and it's the computer that's the limiting factor, right? If you're on an old Lenovo laptop from 2004, this might not work, right? I've got a nice new one. It's only a year old. It's a nice beefy processor. My CPU is not the limiting factor. It can dance circles around the ECU as fast as the ECU is. So I'm going to go whole hog, and I'm going to reduce to 10 milliseconds, right? And you'll see that that just closed my log out because we can't update live like that. But if I go back, short term 1, 10 milliseconds, short term 2, 10 milliseconds, long term 1, 10 milliseconds, long term 2, 10 milliseconds. That is now going to gather a hell of a lot more data in the same intervals, and it's going to give us an increased count number, right? That's my final tip to you in this video. So when we go forward from here with this logging setup, we're going to have more to play with and more to model with, and that, with increased resolution, we will have easier, better results as we tune, right? But I couldn't be more pleased with being able to show you this. It worked exactly the way it should, and you'll note that I followed that 1, 2, 3 cycle, right? Step 1, rough cut and multiply by percentage. Quick and dirty log. Step 2, smooth cuts, right? Precision. We take almost double the amount of logging, right, to get the counts we want, and we start multiplying by half. And then on the third run, we see if I hadn't dialed in, I definitely would post to the file and then do one more run to confirm things are good, and maybe just keep that, maybe tighten it up a little. But usually by that third run, I have found we're pretty much there. So the 1, 2, 3 high-low method, man, it works. So like I said, from here, we're going to wrap up. Next up, I will be heading into, I will do table 11. I'm not going to show it like I did this one, table 11 and 1, but I'll show you the results and talk a little bit about that. And then we will go into tuning speed density, optimal power. So thank you for joining me. Good luck out there and happy tuning.